Hello and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host Josh Size, and I'm gonna jump right into this episode. You guys already know Josh Taylor is back in action against Jack Catterall this weekend, and I just wanted to give a quick prediction video. Now, immediately upon hearing this fight, I wasn't particularly excited for it. I thought Jack Catterall was a scrub, and I completely mixed him up with someone else. Josh Taylor's coming off one of the best victories in his career in becoming undisputed champion. There were several hiccups in this fight where Josh Taylor did hurt himself and the fight had to be postponed. So there's a lot of animosity, there's a lot of buildup in this fight. But upon doing a deep dive, look, I'm a big boxing fan, but it's hard to be extremely proficient in the career of every fighter. And I wasn't really that familiar with Jack Catterall. So I went back and I started looking and looking and looking. And Jack Catterall is actually a live dog. I'm not going to sit here and say that I believe that he is going to beat Josh Taylor, but this fight is a hell of a lot better, in my opinion. Jack Catterall has a very nice toolkit. I didn't realize he was such a good and polished boxer. I love the way he uses that front hand. It's very educated. His right jab, his use of angles, his little check right hook, and his proficiency in moving makes this fight very interesting. Anytime a southpaw fights a southpaw, it always gets a little tricky with both fighters. And honestly, Josh Taylor hasn't fought a high-level southpaw, in my opinion, since he fought Regis Prograis. And truthfully, in that fight, I think he surprised a lot of people. At the time, I wasn't really doing a podcast, and truthfully, I wasn't as well-rounded in UK boxing, and I didn't realize how much you don't know certain people from different regions, because boxing is a tremendously big and worldwide sport. There are so many names that you find out way later down the line, or someone puts you on to them. I'm no different. You can't know everything. You can't get everything right. But Jack Catterall can box. I watched this fight with Davies, and I went back and started really looking, and I think he's going to give Josh Taylor some problems. I think Josh Taylor in this prediction video is going to get the job done, but I think he might win a pretty close but clear decision. I think it might be 7-5 or even 8-4, where Jack Catterall propels himself into the spotlight that, hey, at 140, Josh Taylor continues to fight nothing but the best. If you really think about it, Jack Catterall is the silver WBO champion. That's the notch right below the world champion. Josh Taylor is the undisputed champion at 140. So at this point, I know people think mandatories are annoying and Josh Taylor should fight so and so, move up to fight Crawford, do this, do that. But at the end of the day, when you're fighting your mandatory, you are fighting the best guy according to your sanctioning body's rankings. You have to call a spade a spade. I'm not sitting here and saying that rankings are not shit sometimes. Sometimes somebody clearly cherry picks their way and really just abuses the ranking system, right? But in this particular case, Jack Catterall is pretty good. And I think he's going to give Josh Taylor some problems initially, but I do think Josh Taylor will outbox him and win a pretty wide decision. I don't see Josh Taylor knocking out Jack Catterall. I think Jack Catterall has a pretty good chin, and I do think that Josh Taylor is going to get the job done. But Jack Catterall uses angles, can move backwards, can fight going forwards. He can do it all seemingly. Just Josh Taylor, if you look at his pedigree, if you look at who he's been in the ring with, if you look at who he shared the squared circle with, I don't think there is a more complete fighter in boxing in his division. I think Josh Taylor is up there with Terrence Crawford. I think Josh Taylor is up there with Lomachenko in terms of boxing IQ. I think Josh Taylor's up there in terms of boxing ability with someone like Tyson Fury. Someone like Canelo Alvarez, very different styles. But when you talk about boxing IQ, when you talk about boxing skills, when you talk about pure pugilism, there are very few people that are as good as Josh Taylor. And I think in this fight, he's going to show that there's a level, even though Catterall is not that far below. I think if Josh Taylor struggles, I don't think it's a product of Josh Taylor not being a good boxer. There are just certain people that make things very difficult, right? He can do enough where Josh Taylor, whose expectations are through the roof, right? Considering the rankings, the pound for pound, considering the fact that he's newly undisputed, considering all the pressure that comes with that, I think he can struggle a bit. That doesn't mean he's any less than a great boxer than he's shown. So in this fight, expect Jack Catterall to have pockets, maybe hit Josh Taylor a few times, make it interesting. I think he can make it interesting. I just don't think he has enough to best Josh Taylor, who in my opinion is just hitting his peak, and he can do whatever he wants to do. So stay tuned for this video. I'm actually going to do on, is Josh Taylor underrated? I know that seems a little out there, but I kind of feel like he's not getting his just due. And I'm going to go through why and look at his resume, etc., etc. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 1K. We are 921. So not too far away, only 79 away. On Instagram, we hit the 3,500 follower mark. Thank you so much. If you're not following on Instagram, at Good Boxing Podcast. And I just want to say thank you and have a great day. Be well. Enjoy the fight.